Hi, so I'm the second affirmative speaker, but I'd first like to start by refuting some of the claims of my opponent. So he first mentioned that the entire reasoning behind the exclusionary rule would be to deter police from getting or using unwarranted searches. But in fact, Shine Marcia from the Federal Criminal Law Center mentions that if the evidence was thrown out, the police officer that violated your rights is left unaffected. Oftentimes, the police officer doesn't even know that they violated your constitutional rights, and without a penalty or some other kind of repercussion for violating your Fourth Amendment rights, there's nothing stopping or even slowing down a police officer from going back out onto the streets and doing the same thing to someone else. Additionally, there's no actual factual proof that shows that the exclusionary rule itself reduces the amount of unwarranted searches that are used by the police forces. He also mentions the innocent until proven guilty phrase. However, with the exclusionary rule, your innocence, a person is not proven guilty until even before a warrant is obtained. So regardless of whether the warrant is obtained legally or illegally, your burden of proof has still been broken. He also mentions the exceptions to the exclusionary rule, like the good faith exception. However, these are very rarely used in courts. Additionally, he mentions that the exclusionary rule could also be cast aside if the trial is over a small confliction with the exclusionary rule. But in the famous court case Hudson v. Michigan, the exclusionary rule was used to extend a case that a firearm found in Hudson's apartment should not be included in a court trial because police didn't wait at least 20 seconds at the door before entering the residence. So basically the exclusionary rule was abused in this case to draw on the trial for as long as possible, drain money from the defendant, for basically the police not waiting long enough at the door before they broke and entered into somebody's house. So I'm gonna go ahead and rephrase the claims that my partner made. So the first claim that the exclusionary rule protects the guilty. Well, one case in Detroit, a prosecutor lost a chance to bring charges against a man possessing $12 million worth of cocaine because police failed to get a warrant when they searched an apartment. In California, the convictions of 2 men of rape, burglary, and robbery were overturned because the court rules that authorities didn't hold a valid warrant. Also, in Fort Worth, Texas, police seized 300 pounds of marijuana, but the case was thrown out because the police didn't have time to get a warrant authorizing their search. And finally, in New York City, a thief carrying a handful of stolen purses dropped the contraband. A passerby picked them up and used it as evidence, but the court again ruled that it was an illegal search and the conviction was overturned. So those are just 4 specific cases, but Mies Edwin from the New York Times cited that Stephen Schleisinger, the director of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, estimated that up to 55,000 serious criminal cases each year are dropped because of the exclusionary rule. And in fact, half of those were set free or rearrested within 2 years of their original conviction. Additionally, the exclusionary rule is abused in courts by defense attorneys who have found loopholes which allow them to find the most nitpicky details, like I mentioned earlier with the Hudson v. Michigan, with the waiting outside the door, not waiting outside the door long enough before breaking and entering. As far as our inherency claim, that the exclusionary rule is harmful to our justice system, FineLaw from criminalfinelaw.com stated that, gave an example that a suspect that is arrested could tell police where the gun was used to commit the crime is, but if he was not read his Miranda rights before, or if the police ignored his pleas to speak to his lawyer, the gun may be deemed admissible in court because of the exclusionary rule. So that shows that the exclusionary rule allows the most minor details to overlook like huge evidence, such as him saying where the gun was. Finally, the solvency claim that holding police misconduct accountable rather than excluding evidence will improve our justice system. Holding police accountable will let less criminals go free, as my partner suggested, because the judicial system has a responsibility to protect society against these criminals, and by enforcing the exclusionary rule, it's failing to do so. Finally, cops who knowingly obtain evidence illegally will be punished if they're held accountable for their misconduct. So, punishing police officers for misconduct will have a much more direct deterrent on the morality of the police force than the exclusionary rule itself does.